Good day. Welcome to Agenda. Sitting in for Tito Beltran, I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time. All right, let's kick it off with our starter quote for today, and it says, "It is difficult to free fools from the chains that they revere." Isn't that true? And then now, moving on, we're going to take a quick look at just the front pages of the major broadsheets, beginning with the Philippine Star. President Ferdinand Marcos says that his administration never promised to China that it would remove the BRP Sierra Madre from the Ayungin Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. Marcos said further that if a deal existed, he is rescinding that agreement as of now. Joint maritime patrols between the Philippines and the United States in the West Philippine Sea are expected to begin by the end of the year. Efforts to conduct these joint patrols stemmed from various incidents between the Philippines and China over contested waters, as the most recent cases underscored. Meanwhile, the Department of Energy, or rather, Department of Environment and Natural Resources and Public Works Department are jointly studying the construction of water impounding system as a method of mitigating floods. The government will study how this infrastructure can also serve the needs of agriculture and power industries. And Morocco rates are down for the second month of August as the generation charge, which accounts for more than half of the power rate, has further declined. So good news all around for consumers. Now, on to our topic for today. The Philippine Statistics Authority is releasing second quarter GDP data this morning. Bank economists are predicting that GDP growth will have slowed down this quarter. We're going to discuss that with our first guest right away. But before that, let's watch this introductory video.
Before the release of the second quarter gross domestic product growth rate today, the local stocks rose by 57.48 points to 6,530.45. This is despite the forecast of bank economists that our GDP growth will further slacken for the second straight quarter. First Metro Investments and the University of Asia and the Pacific said the country's GDP growth will likely slow to 5.6%. Meanwhile, a Business World poll of 21 economists reveals a median estimate of 6% GDP growth. Economists explain that high inflation and increased interest rates may have dampened household spending and capital formation in the second quarter. What could be the other reasons behind the predicted slower economic growth? And how can the government improve its performance this third quarter? Let's discuss this on today's agenda.
Professor Emmanuel Leyco currently serves as the president of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He previously served as undersecretary and officer in charge in the Social Welfare Department.
Good morning, Professor Leyco. Good to have you again on the show.
Thank you. Good morning, Regina, and thank you for having me back.
Oh, just call me Reg.
Reg.
There's so much to discuss today. You heard our introductory video about the GDP second quarter data that's being released today. What are your thoughts? Ano yung expectations niyo?
Well, based on the survey of other economists, we are expecting a lower growth rate. And I think that's indicative of what we are seeing around us, not just in the Philippines, but for example, the Chinese exports are down. And in fact, they're seeing like a 20% decline in their exports. So to me, what that means is that the exports of China to other parts of the world would be a good indicator of what's happening all around us. And the Philippines cannot be exempted from that.
You know, we say slower growth rate, pero objectively 6% is still a pretty good number, right?
Yeah, it is. But there are some saying that it could be lower than 6%. So
Okay.
in the next the next few hours, we will see what the numbers are. But I think the expectation is that the numbers are declining, not just around us, not just here, but also when we look at the previous month's GDP growth rates, we're down, we're declining. And we're seeing it in terms of consumption, seeing it in terms of spending. Remember, household spending is a major component of our
It's
economy.
it's actually the biggest component. That's a good reminder, no, to everyone who's listening in. Household spending or in consumption is the biggest chunk, uh, biggest contributor to our economy. Um, to what do you attribute this lower spending appetite?
Well, the appetite is there. It's just that production is not able to cope.
Hmm.
Uh, remittances from our overseas Filipino workers continue to come in, continue to come in strong. However, our own production, agriculture, our manufacturing, they're down, they're declining. We're not able to cope with demand, and therefore, the likely impact of that is inflation. When there are not enough supplies in the market and people are
Hmm.
strong in terms of their demand, the competition for the limited number of goods will trigger inflation.
Hmm. Well, you brought it up na rin. So inflation nga is the biggest problem at the moment, no? Because let's take the most important produce, rice, right? In other shows, we've spoken to the manufacturers, these manufacturing groups, and they all say that they will have to increase prices in the coming months. Kasi ito yung group of importers, they say that prices in the world market have increased. And in fact, yesterday, Bloomberg Bloomberg Asia ran a report saying by their tracking, by their calculations, prices in Asia are at the highest level in 15 years or since 2008. And because of the ban in India, because of the um, less production in the Thailand. So where do we go from here? I mean, these are our Thailanders, of course, where we source a big chunk of our imported rice from, right?
Right. Thailand, India are major players in the rice
Yun na nga.
export markets. No, so India said we have to worry about our own requirements. Thailand says, "Hey, I'm not also going to expose my own food production just to be able to serve the interests or the demands of the
Yes, so
global market."
so it's food protectionism na. Everyone's
Yes,
protecting their own supply first before exporting.
exactly. And so those who are relying on food imports for their food security, like the Philippines, will be at a greater risk during this
Mm.
period. So we can all expect that there will be more price movements in the market, particularly with our food requirements. So where do we go from here? We can expect, I don't think India is contemplating on lifting its ban on rice exports, nor Thailand will not continue its limited exports. So the Philippines will only be limited to securing its own food security from food supplies domestically. Problem is, binabagyo tayo,
You
no?
know,
So,
that's the other problem, the weather.
you
Para
know,
we can't catch a break, you know. It's like on the one hand, we can't source on the global market. On the other hand, domestic supply is not enough because of
and
the weather.
that exposes the folly, or the risk of relying on food imports. If we do
Mm.
not secure our own food supplies domestically, we will always be exposed to risks with the movements, policy regulations, or food policy of the exporting countries around the world. So in the Philippines, I think the only thing going for us right now when we are importing is that the peso is strengthening a little bit. So that gives us a little breather, but that's not going to last for long. When we continue to import and there's not much exports going around, the peso will also will be threatened. And when interest rates go up outside the Philippines, will we be forced also to follow suit by increasing our interest rate? And now, I think the impact of interest rate movements on the Philippines is also being felt now. When the cost of capital and cost of money is getting higher, people who are producing may not be encouraged to borrow money to produce. Remember, production production credit is a major input to the country's economy. So when we make credit very expensive, our producers may not go to the credit market to sustain or finance their own production. So we're seeing that now.
I mean, yeah, the peso is strengthening a little bit, and that's important again because we pay for these imported goods in dollars, right? So that's something that we need to tell the viewers as well. Pero we've spoken to the manufacturers and the importers that they also can't absorb the cost, right? So for instance, they're expecting world market prices to increase to up to $600 per metric ton for rice, whereas it used to be now around the 300, 400 range lang at the moment, right? So that's a major price spike, and they can't shoulder that. So again, it will have to be passed on costs, meaning in the end, we consumers will pay for it. So is there any short-term solution to this? Do you see any way out? Parang we're caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment.
Place, no? Exactly. But if I may add to that, fuel prices just went up. You know, so global prices are going up. Fuel prices domestically just went up big time. No, it's not just a few centavos. It's quite big. So you can expect, we can all expect that in the next round of price surveys, prices of major commodities will go up because transportation or fuel costs is major input to that. So what can we do? Where does that leave us? And if I may, I don't think it's too late to consider this again and again. When we're looking at the numbers of our GDP, our agriculture is down, our manufacturing is down, our services going up. You know, it has always been. The Philippine economy is a service economy driven by household consumption. So I think in the long run, we really have to consider, are we on the right track? Can we consider, you know, it's like, our consumption is very strong, but that is driven by the OFW money, OFW remittances. You know, there is no domestic production to support that. So what do? We get the foreign remittances and then we import. Instead of producing, instead of planting, we import finished products. We import our food. So it's like our workers are going out so that we can spend the money that they send to us for our food, the other goods that we are consuming. So we really have to take a hard look at our strategic trust in terms of how we drive our economy. But in the midterm or in the short run, what do we do? I'm not sure there are a lot of options for us now, except that the government should be prepared to provide support to those who are really needing it. I'm glad that the employment went up a little bit, but underemployment continues to be high. So the government should be prepared to come in a big way. There will be people who are not able to, who will not be able to sustain their consumption, because not everybody has a brother or sister or parents abroad who can send them remittances, and even those remittances are not enough to support our families. So I think in the short term, the government should consider looking at the budget. We have to look at social protection for displaced population. Otherwise, we are only going to see widespread poverty, widespread hunger, and that is not a good picture to look at.
When you say big government support, that they have to come in a big way, you're talking about subsidies, handouts.
I'm talking about not just a handout, but say, for example, when they increase wages, that will support the purchasing power of those who are employed. However, the small businessmen will be at risk of not being able to support higher wages, and therefore the government should come in by way of credit subsidies, tax holidays, and so on and so forth. It's not a one-time, one-shot, one-size-fits-all. It has to be a comprehensive government support, not only to the consumers, but also to the producers as well.
Then, in that scenario naman, Prof, we run into problems with the budget, right? Already next year's budget is at a record high. Every year we keep breaching the ceiling, right? So next year it's 5.767 trillion pesos. That's a record high, and they're insisting that it's already tight, right? There's many more things that can be done, but that's they can't possibly increase it any further. So, and then of course there's the whole question of where do we get the funding from? Where do we get sources? Are tax collections going to be enough? I mean, there's a big debate about military and pension reform. At the moment, as of today, they said that they found the funding source, but we haven't heard what it is yet. So I guess they're trying to work something out behind the scenes. But the point is that there's no money for additional programs.
I'm not sure I could agree with that. Every year, there are hundreds of millions of funds from our budget that are underutilized or were not utilized. So we can start from there. 100 million, 300 million, 400 million are estimated underutilization of some agencies. And then we can be more...
ng confi funds and intelligence funds next year.
Exactly. We can be more efficient with our spending, and we can be more deliberate with our spending. Confidential funds, intelligence funds are not productive funds. They're just basically saying that we're going to watch our people and we need money to watch our people. I think we need to put that money into productive means. We can use that money to provide credit subsidies, or we can even provide tax holidays to small businessmen who need them. In other words, we should stop looking at how we spend the money, but we should also look at what should we collect. We cannot collect from those who cannot afford to pay taxes. Especially when we are saying to the business sector, support your workers with stronger wages. But if we force them to do that, they will also go bankrupt. So we need to support the small businessmen. The big businessmen are okay with the kind of profit margins that they are able to show in the they should be able to support that. But we're looking at hundreds of thousands of small businessmen who will not be able to cope when they start supporting their workers with a stronger wage. And again, Confi, intelligence funds, I don't think they belong to some of the agencies who are asking for them. So let us use our budget and also stay away from more borrowing. We are over 60% of our GDP when it comes to our budget. So the benchmark for credit rating agencies that if a country exceeds 60% of their debt burden, the interest rates will go up, or they may not even be able to lend them more money. So
Mm-mm.
again, governance is not easy. It's
Yeah.
not going to be a
Yeah.
walk in the park. So when we say our government is being pressured, to do a lot of things. Yes, the government has a lot of responsibilities in order to make themselves valuable to our people.
Yeah.
No, it's not
Yeah.
going to be a walk in the park. I'm sorry, Reg.
It is a very, very difficult balancing act. But we're going to talk about what you said about the debt to GDP ratio after the break. We just have to pause for a quick commercial break right now. We'll continue with our chat with Pamantasan and Lungsod, the Manila President, Emmanuel Leyco, right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Agenda here in One News. I'm Regina Lay, sitting in for Cito Beltran, and let's resume our conversation with economist and Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, President Emmanuel Leyco. Let's bring him in. All right. So, Professor Leyco, before the break, we were just talking about, or you had brought up the debt to GDP ratio. You know who's beginning to worry about that? No less than President Marcos himself, right? So he was at a ABAC, ASEAN Business Advisory Council, or sorry, ASEAN Business Council meeting recently, and he said that we worry about our debt to GDP ratio in the Philippines as it stands at about 63% at the moment. That's a little too high for us, and it's not ideal, quote unquote. Yan ha, so verbatim. And for context, this debt that we're talking about, the national debt is already at the record 14.15 trillion pesos at the end of June. Since President Marcos took over, he added about 1.36 trillion pesos to the national debt. So it's a lot of big, very big numbers. And I throw the question to you as well. How worried are you looking at these?
Actually, even before it hit 60, I was already worried. And it doesn't look like we will stop at 63, given the deficit that the proposed government budget will create. I think we will be requiring more borrowing, not only domestically, but also externally. So that is worrisome. In terms of the government budget, debt service is a must that will be included in our budget. It's a mandatory spending. It's a mandatory line item in our budget. And therefore, regardless of how much we are able to collect, we should make do of our promise to pay. And the implication for that is the social services, the spending of the government will be affected by debt service. Combine that with the pension fund of the military and uniformed personnel, which continues to grow. And I think that was a reasonable citation or a reasonable warning to the government that if we don't do anything, the debt burden combined with the military pension, the uniformed personnel, that will be a big load or a heavy load on our budget. So to start with the government debt, I think additional borrowing should be stopped, should be minimized, and deficit spending should be reconsidered. That is not good for a country like the Philippines. Our GDP growth rate, the topic we started with, is not exactly encouraging. 6% from last year is not a good showing for the Philippine economy. So if our GDP is shrinking, it's not growing that strong, and then we continue to borrow, we will be worried about how our budget will be able to sustain this debt service. And continuing borrowing will also send a signal to the rating agencies. Right now, we are at triple B. We are eyeing single A. We want to have a positive outlook. The kind of budget that we are proposing does not send a good signal to the market. That means that the government is not able to collect enough for its requirements. The government needs the borrowing, and remember, the interest rate outside is continuing to grow. Right now, it looks like it's stabilizing a little bit, but it's stabilizing at a high level. And if we borrow externally, the Philippine peso will be pressured to make sure that we are able to buy enough dollars to pay for our external debt. Again, food security, food production, GDP growth rate, inflation, and now our public spending that is being supported by more borrowing. That doesn't look good for our economy and for the country as a whole. Our social services will be threatened. We have always earmarked money for the poor, but then when we say we need to do more for the poor, we don't have any more money because it's going to debt service. That's terrible.
So this debt to GDP ratio at the moment is about 63% nga, di ba? So ang threshold, the globally accepted threshold is about 60%, right? So we're a bit above that. And you said you don't think we're going to stop there. How high do you think this could get, or how bad do you think this could get?
I think 65% is not remote for the Philippine debt to GDP ratio. But they will always say, hey, look at the US, look at Japan. They have 100%. But don't compare the Philippine economy with the economy of the US and the economy of Japan. The US is the only government in the world who can legally print dollars. So they can print dollars. The Philippines will have to buy dollars to pay for our external debt and our imports. So when they say the argument about breaching the 60% threshold is not so bad, that is terrible. I think if we consider debt burden in terms of our budget, paying for debt is not productive use of our funds. But of course, you have to pay for our borrowings. But then that debt service is no longer going to any more productive use. So instead of investing debt service for our requirements, that's just going to a previously incurred expense. So that is not good. By any indication, 60% is not good for the Philippines. It's not good for our budgets, not good for our people.
And then the problem, though, I have to point out about not borrowing is then you run the risk of slowing down the economy inadvertently, right? Because the government needs a lot of money. You have to keep feeding the beast. The government needs money to keep the infrastructure projects going. They need to keep building bridges, airports, airways, seaports, and so on and so forth, right? So don't you run that risk that if you stop borrowing,
I think we can be more.
then
I think we
slow
can
down
be
the
more.
economy?
Not exactly. I think we can be more selective. We can be more focused. What infrastructure do we need right now? What infrastructure can we defer? What infrastructure can we forego? I think if we are clear about our economic thrust, our economic direction, if we are clear about investing for agriculture, we need to see more farm-to-market roads, not roads that will connect somebody's property to another property or to another location. What we need are agricultural roads. I think we have enough skyways here in Metro Manila. In fact, the skyways can be more expensive, and therefore, in terms of commuting public, they will not be able to use that, and they will not be able to get the full benefit of that. So I'll say that we have to be careful with our infrastructure development. We have to be more focused. Let us look at agricultural production, our agricultural trust. And we also need to have infrastructure that will make our power, our energy more or priced competitively in our region. We have they always say we have the second highest or the second most expensive source of energy in our region, but I suppose we have already surpassed the cost of energy in Japan because it's continuing to grow. I think in terms of infrastructure, we'll have to focus on infrastructure that will boost our production, both industrial production and agricultural production. I am not afraid that if we slow down on our infrastructure development and focus on productive infrastructure, I think that will not compromise the continuing development of our economy. Plus, we also have, again, this is the budget season. When they say they're proposing 15 trillion, you have to start with how much are we expecting to collect? How much are we expecting to spend that will boost the productivity of our economy? You know, if we are just spending more and more without regard for where are we going to get the money from, and who will benefit from this spending, I think now is the time for our legislators to scrutinize the Philippine government proposed budget more carefully.
Unfortunately, it's now worked its way through Congress and it's now just awaiting signatures. So I don't know how many more changes we can make. And also, the other night on the big story, we had Finance Chief Ben Jokno on it, and he said it's not so worrisome kasi the debt servicing portion of the budget next year is only at about 12%, right? That's equivalent to about 699 billion pesos. And he said that actually the trend has been declining. The debt servicing trend over the last couple of years has been declining. So he's not too worried about it in terms of, you know, us being able to keep up with payments. Because when we talk about debt servicing, really we're talking about this is the amount of money that you pay in interest, right? So if you, for instance, for a regular consumer, ito yung interest part ng credit card that you pay every month. So for us as a country, we're paying 699 billion pesos next year just for the interest. And he says that's not worrisome. That's only 12% of the budget. What do you think about this?
I have high respects for Secretary Jokno. I've seen him in the Department of Budget and Management, Bangko Sentral. So he has access to a lot of information that perhaps the public do not have access to. However, if we look at the numbers with the Philippine Treasury and we look at the debt service schedule, Secretary Jokno is right. We may not be worried this year and next year. But remember, there are new debt that was contracted in the last few years. So the debt service payment may not kick in immediately, but in the next 3, 4, 5 years, the debt service will grow. Remember, this is not a. I don't think the debt service structure is a level schedule. You know, it's a fixed schedule. I don't think so. So in the next 3, 4 years, perhaps the debt service may not be as high or higher than 12%. But once all of these debt, you know, particularly those that were transacted as medium term or long term, you know, once the debt service payments kick in, they will definitely be felt by our budget in a big way. Not just 12%, 13%, 15%, or even 20%, especially when the government is not able to collect as much as it was expecting to. Remember the slowdown, and I can see that already. You know, many governments, even local government units, they're suffering from slowdown in their revenue collections, and that goes around the whole country. So I will be worried, perhaps not this year about debt service, maybe not next year, but in the next 3, 4, 5 years when the other uh, debt service kick in. That will be very worrisome for us.
And that is a very fair point, and I can only hope Secretary Jokno is watching. We're gonna have to leave it there for now. Professor Leyco, we thank you so much for your insights as always this morning. That's Pamantasan Lungsod President Emmanuel Leyco.
Thank you very much, Raj, for having me. Good morning.
We are going to pause for another quick one before we move on to our next guest. Please stay with us.
The Manila Bay Reclamation project has been a hot topic as of late, especially for fisher groups. The Pambansang Lakas ng Kilusang Mamamalakaya ng Pilipinas or PAMALAKAYA recently called on the government to go beyond the suspension of Manila Bay Reclamation project, saying that companies should also be held accountable for hundreds of fisherfolk already displaced due to reclamation activities. The group cited, for instance, the reclamation in Bacoor City, Cavite, which displaced over 300 fishing families. Aside from this, the group also expressed opposition to President Marcos's appeal for Congress to amend the country's fisheries code. Pamalakaya warned that commercial fishing vessels outcompetes the traditional and backward method of fishing. They added that big fishing vessels can exploit the fishery and marine resources in just a couple of fishing operations. Let's discuss all of these further on today's agenda.
Fernando Hicap is the national chairperson of PAMALAKAYA, an alliance of activist fisherfolk groups. Hicap previously served at the Congress as representative of the Anak Pawis party list.
Well, as you just heard, we are talking all things Manila Bay Reclamation projects for this next segment. We are talking about around 20 reclamation projects ongoing, and experts say an estimated quarter of the area could be destroyed because of the dump and fail project and other activities like seabed quarrying and dredging. And that could be a big problem. So here this morning to talk about all of this, we have Pamalakaya Vice Chairperson Fernando Hicap. Capando, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Capando, can you hear me po?
Hi, morning, Regina.
Hi, good morning. So narinig niyo po yung report that we ran before you. Ano pong masasabi niyo about these reclamation projects? You're already warning
Yeah.
about the environmental damage, no?
Yes, oo. Matagal na nating kampanya, no, ng Pamalakaya Pilipinas. Nagsisimula pa lang yung mga plano, no, ng reclamation. Kung hindi ako nagkakamali, mga 2003, no, 7, mas malala yung magputol na ng mga baka ng Silvertide na isang consortium ng San Miguel Corporation. Ay nire-rehistro na natin, no, ng Pamalakaya Pilipinas yung pagtutol dito sa reclamation. At ngayon, no, sa loob halos ng isang dekada na ng kampanya ng Pamalakaya Pilipinas at mga environmentalists na sumusuporta, no, sa ating legitimate issues para sa pangangalaga ng pangisdaan natin at environment para sa sustainable fishing ground. At ngayon, no, naramdaman natin yung epekto. Hindi pa nagsisimula pa lang, no, yung napakalala ng epekto. Kaya tama, no, yung panawagan na dapat yan ay tigil na dahil irreversible yung impact niya. At ngayon, no, yung narinig na ng Pangulong Bongbong Marcos at may direktiba na, no, na pansamantalang itigil yan. Ang panawagan po ng Pamalakaya ay tagumpay na rin yan, pero masigit sana, no, na ideklara na ang Pilipinas na reclamation free zone.
Kapando, pa-explain naman first kung gaano ba ka-importante yung Manila Bay when it comes to the fisheries industry. Ano ba yung contribution niya to the overall fisheries output?
Yes, ang Manila Bay po ay 1980s yan yung number 1 sa 12 bays, no, ng ating bansa. Ito yung pinakamayaman dahil sa katangian niya nga, no, na napakaraming mga ilog, mga lawa, nagmumula ng tubig na siyang dahilan kung bakit nagiging brackish, nagkakaroon ng alat at tubig tabang na magkahalo dito sa mga coastal area. Kaya napakarami na mga iba't ibang klaseng species yung nabubuhay dyan. At ito na yan, no, maliban doon sa mga isda, yung mga shells natin na kaya napakayaman yan. Mga 1990s, natatandaan ko nung bata pa ako dyan sa Nabutas, wala pa isang oras ng pangunguha natin ng halaan, puno na yung isang sako eh. Kamay lang yung gamit doon. Tapos, pag naglakad ka dyan sa gilid Manila Bay, nung footprint ko, no, pagbalik po, meron ng alimasag, may hipon, pero ngayon po ay wala na, no? At nagsimula yan yung pag-convert yan, yung dagat-dagatan, yung reclamation, no, yung tinayuan nitong dagat-dagatan, saka itong sa PICC. Tuloy-tuloy na yun, no? At mas lalong pinalawak pa yan, yung Bolivia, yung Maridel, no? Napakatindi na, winasak na nito yung dating pangisdaan yan, dating asinan, dating mga aquaculture, no, mga fish pond. Ngayon ay mga building na yung katayo. At malaki na yung epekto talaga
Oo nga
doon
eh.
sa kita ng mga
Oh.
mangingisda, no? Yung
Oo.
dati ay sapat sa pang-araw-araw, ngayon ay talagang wala nang mahuli. At ngayon, no, mula nung mag-start yung reclamation, yung buong mangingisda ng Manila Bay, ibig sabihin yan, sa 3 reyon, no? Yung sa Ording Tagalog, sa NCR, and Central Luzon,
Mm.
wala nang mahuli. Mga 80% na ng kanilang kita ang nawala mula nung 2021 na mag-start talaga yung reclamation ng San Miguel Corporation at sinabayan nitong iba't iba pa, no? Yung Solar City at iba pa na reclamation. At ang masama dyan, Regina, yung pinapantambak dyan ay galing po dun sa nasa Nicolas Shoal. Dyan sa, yung San Nicolas Shoal po, ito yung Bahura, no? Coral Reef ng Manila Bay. At kung matatandaan natin, noong panahon ni Duterte, Pangulong Duterte, yung ano niya, Manila Bay Reclamation. After 1 year, sabi ng DENR, nabubuhay na yung, bumabalik na yung mga coral reefs, no? Dito sa San Nicolas Shoal. Pero ngayon po, ay wala na po yun, no? Binasak na po yun dahil sa dredging na kung saan na ginagawa itong Buscales na tinatambak dito sa reclamation area.
Kapando, tama po kayo. When you drive along Macapagal ngayon, parang nagdi-drive ka na rin sa Ortigas, eh, no? Or Makati, parang puro buildings na rin siya. Lahat yung
Yes,
area
ano
na
po.
reclaim na. Ano pong gusto niyo mangyari do? Yung by that I mean, what does the group want? Yung Pamalakaya, what are they asking for? Are you asking na patigilin yung mga projects doon?
Yes, oo. Actually, hindi lang, siyempre, pangunahin
Karamihan po
kami, no?
nag-start na eh, Kapando.
Yes, tama po yun, no? Kung sa panawagan po, no, kami sa Pamalakaya bilang pangunahing ang kabuhayan namin nandiyan at banta sa aming pagpapalaya sa aming mga komunidad at yung suporta ng iba't ibang mga environmentalist. Wala po atang environmentalist na sumusuporta sa reclamation, no? Lahat ng mga environmentalist ay tinututulan yan. At ang panawagan talaga namin, itigil na. Tama na yan, into na yan, no? Kung ano na yan nandiyan, kasi hindi na natin may babalik sa dati yan eh. Kasi reversible nga ang impact niyan eh, kaya nakakabahala. Ang call talaga namin, tigil na yan, tama na yan, hindi lang sa Manila Bay, no? Sa buong bansa. Kasi 187 reclamation yan under the PRA. Ito yung lala nung panahon ni Pangulong Duterte, no? Bagamat sa panahon ni BBM, ang binababa nila, sabi nila, meron na lang mga 50 plus reclamation po. Ang isang problema rito, hindi lahat po ng reclamation activity sa naragan ng mga coastal area under ng PRA. Meron pong hindi under ng PRA, ano? Ang isa sa pinakamaliit ng Aerotropolis ng San Miguel Corporation, no? 2,500 hektarya yan, at yan po ay hindi under ng PRA, yan po ay joint project with the OTR, no? Eh marami pa po yan, no? Kaya yung sinasabi ng PRA ng Manila Bay ay merong 22 reclamation project na meron ng complete document, ibig sabihin may mga AIA, may ACC na 22, no? At ito yung mga ongoing na reclamation na. Ang ano natin doon, itigil
Sorry
na yan.
Kapando, naputol po kayo. Sorry Kapando, naputol po kayo. Ano yung sinasabi niyo po? May 22 reclamation projects na
sabi ng PRA, no, na ito yung
Okay.
kompleto na yung kanyang document, ibig
Oo.
sabihin, dumaan na ito sa mga proseso, the part ng mga mangingisda, wala nang consultation, no, para sa amin.
So ongoing na po to eh. So hindi na yata po pwede maitigil at the moment. Pero what you don't like is nag-proceed po siya without consultation with you guys.
Yes, wala pong proseso yan. Sila ng PRA na merong mga processes na sila na yan. Actually, natatandaan ko na kami pa yung nag-inisyatiba, no, para makipag-dialogue sa kanila. Tinatanong namin yung sa Aerotropolis, ano, yung San Corporation Project Commission, Eh sila mismo sabi nila hindi nila pinapayagan yun, no? At hindi nila alam
Yeah.
yun. At kung sila nga, dahil meron daw study yung JICA, yung part ng lugar na yan, kung saan tatayo yung aerotrocity sa Bulacan, ay nababahala sila na magtayo ng mga structure o mga building dahil sabi nila 8 times yung subsidy
Mm.
ng lupa dyan compare sa ibang area ng Manila. Kaya hindi
Mm.
sinusuportahan ng PRA. Kaya
Oo nga
ibig
eh.
sabihin nun, parang tinatago, ano? Bagamat may ganun, pero yung tanong natin sa iba pang mga area, wala silang sinasabi.
Mm. Well, sana po nakikinig sila today. But we're gonna have to leave it there. Salamat po for your time. Pamalakaya National Chairperson Fernando Hicap Kapando. Thank you for joining us po.
Opo, maraming salamat, Gina, no? Yes, thank you very much. At maraming salamat. At mabuhay po kayo.
Mabuhay din po kayo. And that was today's agenda. Keep it here on Cignal TV channels 8 and 250 for the latest news. Sitting in for Cito Beltran. I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time.